what are the what's the stuff what are the main reasons people's films, from your experience, get rejected or get turned down or don't get into festivals? Or
a lot of the time, it's not because, as people sometimes assume, because they didn't like the movie or that it's not very well done. A lot of the time, it is competition. So there's lots of submissions from all types of sources, not just on Film Prairie, but obviously the festival sponsors, their alumni, their colleagues, the whole lot submits. So it becomes quite crowded. So, you know, it's a numbers game, basically, that some features. Obviously, space in the program, even though festivals have gone online, some of them are still limited to what they can do because they can't obviously the film on there because of the bandwidth and because of the limitations with the films they have. So it's not a case you can put anything online. It's more a case of they're a little bit limited in their space. And also it can be because of the film, which something is that's when a filmmaker submits who hasn't looked at their film properly and can't see the limitations in it and gets upset why it isn't getting to festivals. That can be linked to, as I said before, the story is not edgy enough or graphic enough to go into the festival circuit, or the sound is not there, or the sound's bad, or there's problems with the editing, there's problems with the acting, the length is too long. You know, you said your film is 20 minutes, is now 3 minutes. Some of them can't see it needs to be cut. So if the film is not where it needs to be to reach its full potential, it's not a polished product that has actually some edgy value to it and presents something a bit more fresh, that will not help get into any type of festival.
Do you find when you're work, like when a client approaches you, will you look at their film from the standpoint and just say,
oh, yes,
I can work with you, I can't, or it doesn't offer this, or it doesn't offer that, or
yes,
you know, like I did a video recently on running times, just when you mentioned it there, simply because I was trying to explain from a festival's perspective that like your film could be incredible, but if your film is too long, that running time might start to work against you from a programming perspective, just to say that, like, you know, because from you're saying from bandwidth and from the amount of scope you have, sometimes it can come down to, okay, well, that film is really good but it's 17 minutes long, and these 6 films are incredible and they're 3 minutes a piece. Do you know what I mean? And that it starts to become like a numbers game after a while. So running time sometimes is a thing. I remember sometimes I get filmmakers who approach me, because we have a 15-minute cap, it's all short. I have filmmakers who approach me and they say, listen, I want to add an extra minute. I have this really good sunrise footage that I want to add to the film. It's like, okay, well, that's great, but how important is that sunrise footage in the sense that, you know what I mean? Do you need it? Is it that integral to your story, or do you just really like how it looks? Do you know what I mean? And then, and you're right, I don't think sometimes people don't factor that in, if you know what I mean, or that whole kill your darlings thing, where they're people are so interested in they've slaved over and they like it so much that they don't want to remove things, but there's so many factors at play where stuff like that can work against you.
That's true. Completely, you're right. It's interesting because a lot of the time it becomes too much about the visual than it is the story, and that thing with short films, as you know, any short film can be shorter.
The shorter that's true, the shorter the better. Like, you know, or like, it's funny because you're talking about edgy content, and I 100% agree, and you do notice cliches when you're programming events. You start to notice cliches. I'm sure you notice all the time, and when you work the thing, you start to notice that stuff that people have watched filters back into the shorts that are being made, and you create a short film and you love it, but little do you know that 6 or 7 other similar themed things have appeared. Do you know what I mean? So from a programming's perspective, you're looking at a film where, you know, somebody's watched Tarantino with his mystery suitcase, and you're saying, okay, well, there's 6 other films where somebody has done something similar. Do you know what I mean? So it's funny. There's just so many different things at play, and sometimes I find filmmakers are like, well, my film is crap, and there's 1,000 different reasons why your film mightn't get picked, and quality isn't necessarily one of them. But you are right, short films could always be shorter. And one, I can't speak, I can only speak from my event and the events I've worked at, but people don't make, like, anytime somebody submits a comedy, and comedy is very hard, but when a comedy's done well, it's a real breath of fresh air from a programming perspective.
Of course. Comedy is hard.
It's hard, but when it's done, and I always say, you know, people are like, I'm going to do a horror, I'm going to do a psychological thriller. I was like, yeah, okay, but maybe consider something, because from a fresh perspective, from somebody watching all these films, they're like, oh my God, a comedy, that was quite funny. Or I only ever got one musical, and I remember thinking, God, I'd love if more musicals came in. They're hard, but they, as a calling card, and it's to stand out from the pack, something like that. Do you know what I mean? It really punches through the noise. You know what I mean?
And comedy is the timing, because
Yeah.
if the timing is off, oof, it can go downhill.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be literally just like boom, 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 and not a gaps, because it'll just lose the fun and the whole message. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you say if you, and also comedy works better when you've got somebody that's got that lived-in face and has experience the
Yeah.
role. And if that's not there, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I would never. If like, I would never. You know, I wouldn't say try a comedy in the sense that, you know, if your story is your story. It's just, I suppose, from the perspective of, I think I find a lot of people lean on certain genres, and sometimes if sometimes when it's not the norm, it really stands out from the crowd. So and if it's incredibly short, you know what I mean? If it's a really short that's funny, because it's a joy to program, because you can wedge it in somewhere, and it gives the audience kind of a break or a breath of fresh air, even if it's for a minute and they move on. But do you get a whole broad range of films coming to you? Is it or
Absolutely, a really broad range. We get a lot of narrative fiction, both shorts and features. We do get documentaries, and we do work on them. We've got one now which is doing really well. It's that's already got into some big festivals: Rhode Island, Nashville, and CineQuest, all like of a high end and Oscar level qualifying. So really excited about that one. It's a poignant piece, documentary and filmmaking. Oh my goodness. We don't get many music videos, and when I do, they have to obviously be exceptional. We don't get a lot of those. It tends to be narrative fiction, shorts and features, and documentaries do come in too. But we do the whole lot. Just the one we don't really get is music videos. It's maybe not a popular one. There are music video obviously categories, but it's one I think people don't always want to do festivals for.
Yeah, we have a music video category because a lot of and we don't get a huge amount of submissions for it, which I was surprised, because I thought, you know, sometimes music videos are pure creation, in the sense that you don't have to, you're not necessarily you have to adhere to the rules of cinema. Do you know what I mean? And so there's an excitement to making a music video, but no, we just don't get a lot of them. But it's just maybe it's just again, we work just with mobile phones, so it could be a case of a thing. No, I know a lot of filmmakers who make things on music videos on mobile phones, but I don't know. I mean, I was contacted recently by a filmmaker by a musician to make a music video, and I offered to do the music video for him. I said, listen, I'll do it, but I was wondering, would you allow me to do it on the phone? And he was very hesitant about it. And I said, listen, I'll do it for virtually nothing. I just, for the challenge. And I'm a firm believer that if you, when it comes to something like that, if you have a really good idea, a really clever idea with a music video, you can do it in a lo-fi clever way that's visually interesting, and you cut to music. But he passed on it because I think he I don't know, I think there's a mindset that sometimes I work with musicians, and they have a mindset very much of MTV in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I kind of think that music videos are of a different currency now. They're a different language. It used to be, you'd make something very kind of exciting and expensive, but maybe necessarily people don't have the same avenues, or you're so inundated with it on YouTube and stuff like that. So I think going the cheaper, clever route, like all the music videos that stand out in my mind, like Karma Police and stuff like that, are all very, very simple music videos. Now, I'd imagine that costs a bit of money, but in terms of a concept, it's very simple. Do you know what I mean? But that's kind of, so that's, but we do get music videos in. They are engaging. Some of them are quite clever, but it's just that you don't get a lot of them, which is strange, because it means that there's a whole category there that people aren't really taking advantage of. And when people do submit, it's less competitive, but people don't do it.
Exactly, yeah.